Well, we're actually about to do a press conference to speak a little bit about this, but we got word at the embassy that our request has been denied by the government here locally.
All right, as predicted, the 4 Democrat members of Congress, not from the state of Maryland, are down in El Salvador right now, and it's not going too well. So in this video, we're going to watch some clips of them not being too happy of the current situation down in El Salvador. The only word I really want you guys to remember is unofficial, because El Salvador is not playing the game of just because you're American and you come down here, we don't have to talk to you. This is an unofficial trip.
What do you know? Is there any chance you'll be meeting with Abrego Garcia while you're there?
Well, we're actually about to do a press conference to speak a little bit about this, but we got word at the embassy that our request has been denied by the government here locally. They say it's because we're not here on an official capacity. This is part of the reason why Representative Robert Garcia and I sent a letter to Chairman Comer of the Oversight Committee asking for this to be an official CODEL. But we're not giving up. We're going to continue. We have more meetings scheduled for the rest of the day. But part of this, too, is making sure that we keep the conversation alive. We're building off of the trip of Senator Van Hollen, and we're not the first members here, and we're not going to be the last.
Which, by the way, is bad news for me and you. Not only is this embarrassing for America, but this means we have to keep making videos about this topic, and I'm really ready to move on. But speaking of that letter, of the official letter that they did not receive as far as an official trip down in El Salvador, I already made a video on this previously, but I'll just give you guys the cliff notes. If you also wish to meet with him, you can spend your own money, but I will not approve a single dime of taxpayer funds for use on the excursion you have requested. Your request is denied. This is from the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. So once again, I don't know who's paying for this. It doesn't look like the US government wants to pay for this, but maybe we'll get some answers later. But the important thing is this is an unofficial trip, which means El Salvador does not even need to talk to these guys.
Why, Congressman, are you in El Salvador? You are there for an El Salvadorian man who was a resident illegally of Maryland. You're a congressman from Florida. Why are you in El Salvador?
Well, we're here because a man who had protected status in Maryland, a Maryland man, union member, worker with a citizen wife and beautiful children, was taken out of his state and out of the United States back over here without due process. And for us, we're here for a couple of reasons. Number one is because every person in our country deserves due process. And we want to make sure that we draw the line here at Kilmar Garcia.
Why, Congressman?
This was not an MS-13 gang member, and you damn well know that.
Oh, come on.
He was not.
Okay,
and
so keep defending this guy.
The administration admitted this was wrong. In America, we have due process, and we are a land of law and order. We are a land of law and order. And this administration is repeatedly showing time and time again they do not care about what the Supreme Court says. They do not care about the rule of law. And you cannot defend sending people to another country.
Just did a poll
to another country where they don't have
Americans
rights.
Think that
where he's
all
denied counsel,
illegal immigrants
due process,
should be deported,
and so much more.
by the way. So you're losing your effort.
All right, I know what you're thinking. Who the heck is David Hogg? Who cares about this kid? Well, you have to remember, Bernie Sanders and AOC, they back everything he's saying as far as pinning Democrats against Democrats. The Democrat Party wants a more left-leaning, more progressive party, according to David Hogg. So they have no problem with challenging other Democrats who are not in full support of all of their ideologies. So when you start to put the pieces together, it makes total sense why Democrats would spend their own money to go down to El Salvador, even though the majority of Americans don't agree with them. It doesn't matter what the majority agrees with. If the Democrats don't agree with you, you might not have a job come next midterm or the next election, so it all starts to make sense.
Congresswoman Maxine Dexter here, coming to you from El Salvador. I flew here last night with 3 of my colleagues to demand that Kilmar Abrego Garcia be released. He is being held in violation of a Supreme Court order expressly telling the Trump administration to effectuate and facilitate his coming home. That is being ignored. This is not just a threat to all people in the United States who could be illegally abducted, detained, and transported internationally against their will, but it is a fact that our president does not recognize the branches of government and the balances of power. This is what we all have been calling a constitutional crisis, yet it is more severe than anything we've seen. We cannot stay silent. We must stay loud. I am here because I refuse to wait for something to happen. We are here to release Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
All right, now this is where things get into some very murky water, something called the Logan Act. And I know a lot of you have been screaming this at the top of your lungs. They are breaking the Logan Act. Basically, generally makes it illegal for U.S. citizens to engage in unauthorized diplomacy with foreign countries with intent to influence the measures of conduct of a foreign government or to defeat the measures of the United States. Now, here's the thing. The people who are being deported from the United States are deemed as terror members. So I will let you guys say what you want to say about this, but all I'm going to say is we are getting into the areas of the possibility of talking about the Logan Act now, and I think this is a very, very dangerous game if the Trump administration does want to go here, and for Democrats to even get this close into possibly breaching the Logan Act. Anyway, leave your comments down below, but this stuff really does scare me because I don't want to see anything too crazy happen in the court systems, but unfortunately, it seems like we're getting closer to that scenario.
What's really important is that Donald Trump is defying a 9-0 decision of the Supreme Court to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back home to the United States. Lower courts have affirmed that. The administration has said they sent him here by accident, and this is a massive due process crisis in our country. Donald Trump cannot defy the Supreme Court. We've got to raise the attention, not just in the U.S., but here, and demand his release. It's really important that
Now, speaking of people who probably won't have a job soon, Gavin Newsom, everyone knows him, the governor of California, he's straight up calling this a conspiracy, if you will, or saying this is all a distraction. That the Trump administration, they want Democrats to focus on this so people are not focusing on the economy right now. In fact, here's what the senator from Maryland had to say, who's already been down in Maryland, about Gavin's statements.
I just want to ask you one last question, just frankly about some raw politics of this. And I'm asking you this because we've heard some of your fellow Democrats like Gavin Newsom say that it's a mistake to have this fight when the economy really is the issue that Democrats should be focused on. He said it's the distraction of the day, the art of distraction. And how is it so that we are looking like we're defending, someone who's out of sight, out of mind in El Salvador? Do you see an argument that the focus on this, regardless of due process, which is totally understandable, but just on the politics, might not be winning for you?
I don't think it's ever wrong to fight for the constitutional rights of one person, because if we give up on one person's rights, we threaten everybody's rights. And I think a lot of voters, both Republican and Democrat, are tired of elected officials and politicians who just put their finger to the wind. And I would say that anyone who's not prepared to stand up and fight for the Constitution doesn't deserve to lead.
Now at this point, I am curious how you guys all feel about this trip. Here is another clip from another congressman on this trip.
Hey, it's Congressman Garcia. I am here in El Salvador with a group of House Democrats advocating for the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia and, of course, checking in on so many folks who have been sent here without due process. The Supreme Court has ordered unanimously that Kilmar Garcia should come back home to the United States. We also know that he was sent here wrongfully. The Trump administration admitted that. We have met now with the U.S. Embassy here, the ambassador. We're meeting with advocates on the ground who are organizing here in El Salvador. We've talked to Abrego Garcia's family, which is heartbreaking. And more importantly, we're here to raise awareness that Kilmar needs to come home. We need to build support here in El Salvador, but also in the United States. He must come home. And I'll say this lastly. The president defying a Supreme Court order is a fire alarm moment in this country. We cannot stand for it, and we must ensure that he's held accountable.
And this suggestion of you that you have made on several occasions now that he is going to deport, that Donald Trump has a desire to deport, anyone, homegrown American citizens, is the point of our conversation, because the walk that we just went through together is, at least to some measure, an element of due process. We just established together that Abrego Garcia is, at a minimum, not an American citizen. He has been removed from the United States by a court order, which was then withheld, to your point, but he was ordered removable. The same courts found that he was a gang member of MS-13. MS-13 is a foreign terrorist designated organization. Those elements, without litigating each, hold on real quick, without litigating each and every one of those details, what would seem clear, Congressman?
In court,
okay.
Allegations doesn't mean truth.
Without litigating that, once again, which a court has litigated, Congressman. Forgive me for 1 second. The point is, he's not anyone. He's not an average American citizen. He's not someone watching from home. He is an illegal alien. He is an alleged gang member of a foreign terrorist designated organization, and he was ordered removed. That would seem a level of elements of due process that certainly distinguishes him from the average American citizen, and you are making a very scary argument to Americans today. You are suggesting to Americans, if he can remove this man, the details of which we just walked through, you're suggesting he can remove you. And that seems a pretty far cry from reality.
It is not a far cry from reality. And I do have to say something. You know, I born and raised Southern Baptist, and I don't think anyone is nobody, number one. But number two, he did not have due process. He was given a protective status. And the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump talked about doing the same thing to U.S. citizens just about less than a week ago. And that should concern people. I'm not here to litigate the man specifically. He can come back to the United States and go through the process. That's what we want to happen. But that's not what's going on. And you want to talk about courts. Wait, hold on. You want to talk about courts, but the highest court in the land told Donald Trump what to do: facilitate him coming back to the country. And guess what they did? They flipped the bird to the Supreme Court. That's not the rule of law. And so we should all be.
I've heard you make that argument, and I've heard Senator Van Hollen make that argument, that you're all of a sudden very dedicated to due process, and you're all of a sudden very dedicated to the legitimacy of decisions made by the Supreme Court of the United States.
And
it's all of.
You're saying all of something.
I feel. Yeah, I feel like. Congressman,
American civil liberties.
Excuse me.
Even for people I disagree with, and that's the difference between us.
Excuse me. I feel like, personally, we'll let the audience decide, if 10 months is relatively recently to be an adoptee of the legitimacy of the courts. Because on July 1st of 2024, you posted on your website the following. It's up right now if anyone wants to go to your website. Our country and the world will now recognize this day as the day the Supreme Court of the United States effectively became an illegitimate, politically corrupt arm of the conservative right wing. That's when the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that Donald Trump had immunity from prosecution. And on that day 10 months ago, you called the Supreme Court of the United States illegitimate. Here today, all of a sudden, you seem to be very dedicated, principled, in fact, to the simple rules of law, due process, and legitimacy of the court.
I still hold that the Supreme Court is very much skewed to the right and that there is corruption on the court. I do hold that today. But the fact that the court is so skewed to the right, and even then, they're still saying a complete decision, unanimous decision, that he needs to be brought home, shows that this shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should be a thing that Democrats, Republicans, everybody are coming behind. Bring the guy home so he can go through due process.
Alright, if you are still watching this video, I really appreciate it. I do find it a little shocking for people who keep dismissing the rule of law and the courts and stuff like that. When you're getting this close to the Logan Act, this could get very, very not good, if you will. I hope we don't get there. I will just leave it at that. I don't want to make any implications. I don't want any division. If anything, I think Democrats are really starting to divide a lot right now. Like, we're getting to an all-new level when you go on an unsanctioned trip and trying to release an illegal immigrant back into America. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. Thank you for everything. I really appreciate you guys. God bless, and we'll see you all later.